My name is Bob Babbitt, and welcome to Babbittville Classic Rewind, a collection of my favorite interviews with some of the legends of endurance sports that have aired over the past 3 decades. I'm hoping you will enjoy these interviews as much as I do. As always, endurance lives here.
Okay, let's go back to 1968, the Olympics.
Okay.
In Mexico.
Right.
I was sitting in my hometown on the riverbank, listening on a transistor radio to the final of the 1500 meters, and really it was down to Jim Ryan and Kip
Keino. Yeah.
Kip Keino, and of course it was a great race, and the static was coming in, and I was so energized, and I sort of listened to the race. Keino won it, and Ryan was second, and I went away, and I just said to myself, that is my dream, that is a goal. I'd love to go to the Olympics. I was so energized. Well, 4 years later, in 1972, I lined up in the first round of the 1500 meters. On my right was Jim Ryan, on my left was Kip Keino. How about that for a dream?
Hope everybody had a great training and racing weekend. My usual co-host, Paul Huddle, is actually in beautiful Costa Rica, taking a little time off before getting set with a little more Ironman camps coming up in January and February. My first guest, I'm very excited to have him on with us, running legend. Won the gold medal, 1,500 meters, 1976, and 30 years ago became the first athlete to break 350 for the mile, running 349.4 in 1975. John Walker joins me. John, how are you, sir?
Good afternoon, Bob. How are you?
It's so cool to have you on air with us, Mr. Walker. I'm a huge fan of yours.
I was just listening to the promo with Rod Dixon.
I've had Rodney on the show many, many times, and
well, the incredible thing is,
yeah,
Rod listened to Keino and to the commentary of Keino and Jim Ryan. I listened to Rod Dixon's race on a transistor radio as well.
Did you really?
At 2 a.m. in the morning. I was so excited when he won his bronze medal.
Now, how far back do you go with Rod?
I go right back to the 70s. Well, 72.
Yeah.
I tried out for the Olympics in 72 at Munich as well, in the 800 meter, but I never got the qualifying standard, even though I'd won the New Zealand champs, so I didn't go along.
Oh, that must.
But Rod was probably one of the most gifted athletes around, because he ran 1:47.6 for 800 meters,
yep,
and also won the New York Marathon. That's a very big gap.
That to me, his range was pretty amazing to run that to run fast at 800, win a bronze at 1500, and go sub 209 at the New York City Marathon. And
he should have won the Olympics in 76.
Oh, he should have won the Olympics in what, in 76? It's at 5
in the 5,000.
5,000.
He was favourite to win. He came on the shoulder of Viren.
Yes.
Allowed Viren to get away from him. He drifted back to 4th or 5th and came again in the straight. I mean, he should never have allowed that to happen.
And he just got 4th, right? And he just missed the medal.
Yeah, which is not a good place.
No. I was watching video of your gold medal from 76, and the one thing that hit me from watching that is you took the lead, and it looked like towards the end you were cruising a little bit, and those guys.
I wasn't cruising.
But were those guys closer than you thought?
I didn't realize where those guys were. I never really wanted to go with 300 meters to go, but considering the race was very slow, as a tactical race, there was no natural pacemakers in there because Bai never ran.
Right. And
considering that I ran 3:34 in the heats and ran 3:39 in the 3:38 in the final.
Well, they went out 62 for the 400 and 2:03 for the half. Yeah.
But I had guys like Ivo Van Dam there who'd just run 1:42 for 800 meters and could run 44 for a quarter.
And Walhooter too.
Rick Walhooter, who was an incredible athlete. I mean, one heck of a talented athlete, who'd run 1:42, 1:43, and had beaten me in over a mile about 6 months previous. So I took a big risk, but the reason why I went so far out with 300 meters to go, if I'd waited from 200 out, they would have beaten me because they would have out-sprinted me.
Right.
But once you get in front, Bob, it's very difficult, and you're running flat out. We ran 37.6 for the last 300.
Oh.
You've got to get up to the guy and get past them, and the guys allowed me to dictate the race because they didn't believe in themselves. I was very beatable on that day.
But sometimes it's funny. Sometimes when you go into a race and you know you're going to win, and the other guys think you're going to win, that's a lot of power.
Well, I had a lot of power that day because I'd run the fastest 5 times in the world. I'd set the world record for 2,000 meters.
Right.
And they were running for second place, and you could see the way they ran. They just allowed me to dictate the race, and thank goodness.
That is good. John, take us through breaking 350. Had that been something? Had that been a goal for you and your coach for a while?
Well, the incredible thing is, Bob, when I was 17 years of age,
Yeah.
and hadn't done much running, just a bit of cross country running, I met my coach, who was Arch Jelly. That's his name, and he sort of come from the Lydia background of mileage and distance running. And he said to me when he saw me run after about a year, you'll be the first person who will go close to running under 350 for the mile.
He told you that?
Now, as a young 18-year-old, I mean, that's a lot to comprehend. I never really just went over the top of my head.
He knew that.
But he trained me like that. He didn't train me as a 4-minute miler. He trained me as a sub-350 miler. When the time came in 1975, I'd won 14 races straight in Europe, broken Peter Snell's New Zealand record.
Right.
And was extremely frustrated that I was running very fast times, around 352 for the mile, 332 for 1500, but not actually doing much.
Right.
Because in those days, there weren't any pacemakers. We just had to go out and run by ourselves.
That's right. You didn't have rabbits.
No, we didn't have 4 rabbits like they do now. And, I mean, it's much easier for them to get fast times. I call them Hoover races.
Hoover races?
They just get
sucked along. I love that.
So basically what I did, I broke the New Zealand record for 1,500 metres of 3:32.4, running solo in Oslo, and I said to the meet promoter, I want to have a shot at the mile next, because I think I can run by his record of 3:51. So I wrote to her and I said, look, don't tell anybody, keep it secret, I want to change the 1,500 metres to the mile, and I'll come to Gothenburg and run it. Well, when I look back now, Gothenburg wasn't probably the most desirable place to run. 12,000 audience, open-sided stadium, and in a place where they don't really care too much about track and field.
So why?
But I went there and I prepared. It was a relatively slight windy night, and I'd had a pacemaker. I had a Swedish guy who could hardly speak English, and I said to him, I want you to run to the 800 in 1:55. Well, he ran the first lap in 55 and then pulled out after another 100 metres, so that left me by myself. So it wasn't off to a good start, so I went 55, 1:54.
Oh.
So then I had to sort of keep on going.
Right.
But the incredible thing is I was with Rod Dixon 3 days prior to that. I went down to the track, and the difference between the 1,500 metres and the mile is 120 yards. And I strode 120 yards 3 times, 15-1, 15-1, 15-1. And I said to Rod, that's what I'm going to finish in. And that was the difference between the world record and the 1,500 metres. That's what I finished in.
Wow.
So basically it became a solo run. And I won something like by about 150 metres.
Now, what was your thought when, oh my God, I didn't just break the world record, but I was the first guy to go under 350?
Well, the Norwegians and Swedes are very knowledgeable people, especially the Swedes.
Right.
And when I got across the line, they were still cheering. If I hadn't have broken the world record, there would have been deadly silence.
Right.
So I knew I'd done something. I didn't know how fast I'd run. The world record at the time was 3:51.1, held by Philbert Bayer. He'd just broken Jim Ryan's world record.
Yeah.
And the crowd was still going crazy, and then they announced it under 350.
That's wild.
And my life changed within minutes.
Did it really? How did it change?
Well, I went from basically a guy that could run fast times to unknown to somebody that everybody wanted a piece of. And my first interview was with Time magazine in New York.
Right.
And the lady, I knew it was going to be a long night because she got on the phone and said to me, now, Mr. Walker, how far is a mile?
Oh, my God.
She said, I know nothing about track and field. Take me through it.
My God.
So there were hundreds of interviews like that. And, Gothenburg is not the easiest place to get around in.
Right.
It's a port where big ships and steelworks operate. It's not like Zurich or Oslo or the big place in London. So, it was just one of those nights.
Now, and after that, did it make a big difference in terms of appearance fees, in terms of how you were respected by meet directors? You must have been in higher demand than you'd ever been.
Well, the appearance fees weren't talked about in those days.
Oh, that's right. Everything was under the table, right?
Yeah, I got $600 and a ticket to nowhere that I couldn't use. And a vase. That was what I got for the world record. So if you broke the world record today and did that sort of significant time,
$1 million.
You'd be rewarded with millions.
Oh yeah, no question about it.
But anyway, that's why I didn't run for the millions. I ran because I wanted to run.
Well, and talking to Rodney, it sounds like the two of you traveled together through Europe and just had great times.
But basically what I had to do, Bob, was concentrate on the Olympics because A lot of people ran world records prior to winning gold medals
Right.
and couldn't emulate in the next year. So the biggest problem is once you become a little bit more famous, everybody wants a piece of you.
Right. So more demands on your time. Yeah.
So I had to say, no, if I don't win the Olympics, I'm going to be a failure. So I've got to for the next year, I've really got to concentrate on that. So that's what I did.
And that's so hard too. You look at so many athletes like a Steve Scott who had a phenomenal career, but he doesn't have that Olympic medal. And it makes a difference when you look at, people who are in the know like yourself or Dixon, people who are in the sport, they know who the great guys were in between the Olympics. But unless you've got that medal, sometimes people look back at your career and go, well, what actually did you win?
Well, Steve Scott was probably one of the most underrated athletes anywhere in the world. He was so tough.
Yeah.
And he produced times. I paced him one night, not deliberately, but I was getting on a bit in the years. I was 32 years of age. And I ran a mile in Oslo, and the pace started off very slow. There was no natural pacemaker, so I took up the lead. And with 300 metres to go, he was sitting on me, and I was starting to get very tired.
Yeah.
And he waited too long to get past me. And Steve recorded the fastest time in America or ever run, 3:47.7.
Right.
And I said to him, "Why didn't you go past me?" He said, "I thought you were going to come back at me." I said, "Jesus, I was stuffed." But I ran 3:49 flat that night at 32, so it shows you I didn't run fast enough when I was 23.
God. Now, did you have many encounters? Did you race against Prefontaine much? Did you step up and run that? Because he was more of a 5,000, 10,000 guy, right?
Prefontaine was a character. I was just coming into athletics when I met Prefontaine.
Yeah.
I saw his movie, and it was a damn shame that he died.
Right.
But I was at a meeting one night in Italy.
Yeah.
There was 20,000 people there, and Prefontaine was under the world record for 5,000 metres. And he got to the 3,500 K, and he pulled off the track. And the crowd went silent, and I said to him afterwards when he was having a cigarette and a beer, I said, "Why did you do that?" He said, "They only paid me enough to run 3,500 metres."
Oh, no way.
So that was Prefontaine.
That was Prefontaine. That totally sums up Prefontaine.
Yeah, he was a man of his own making.
How about Henry Rono? Did you have much contact with him?
Yes, I did. Henry Rono was probably so far ahead of his time it wasn't funny.
He was amazing.
Four world records, but he was an alcoholic.
Yep.
And he was just a sad case of an epitomized an athlete, a bit like George Best, the late George Best.
Right.
So much talent and yet not channeled in the right direction. I used to watch Henry Rono come to London, out of shape, running 14:50 for 5,000 metres.
Right.
2 months later, running the world record. He would just go down to the track and run lap after lap after lap after lap and get himself fit. He was so talented, but a great shame. He could have been one of the greatest marathon runners around.
Oh, no question. No question. Now, John, seeing what Rodney accomplished as a marathoner, did that ever interest you to take a step up that way, or that seemed like a long way?
The furthest I ran was a half marathon. I ran 1 hour 1 for half.
Wow.
Which was pretty decent.
That's pretty decent, 101? Yeah, I think so.
But I never trained for a marathon. I trained like a marathon runner.
Well, yeah.
But Rod was so tough. I mean, I trained with Rod many times on the distance over the hills, but I could never keep with him. He was too strong. He
told one story where you two ran with Prefontaine, I think, one time, where you two just take turns surging on him, and Pre would surge, and then you two guys would take turns surging, and he didn't quite realize it was 2 against 1.
Yeah, but we were flat out, and he didn't realize it.
That is funny. Now, when you first met Arch Jelly, and he asked you about what your training was, and you were, 17, 18 years old, at that point, you were just racing on the weekends. You really didn't train in between, right?
From the age of 7 to 17, I never trained.
Just raw talent.
I ran to and from school, ran a bit of cross-country on the weekends, and that was about it. But the kids in those days, Bob, were a lot fitter than they are today. They don't sit around watching computers or have the politically correct where you get an A, B, C or for jumping or running or whatever.
Right. Well, yeah.
First was first, and you ran.
You ran everywhere.
You were getting to school.
You ran. You played soccer. You played football, and you ran all the time.
I played tennis. What I used to do is I used to run 10 miles to the tennis court, play tennis for 4 hours, and run home again.
Oh my God!
So that was a means of getting to tennis. It wasn't a means of running. It was just the only way I knew how.
And if you look back at a lot of the guys from interviewing Steve Jones and Rod Dixon, running was just something you did. It wasn't something as a career. Nobody thought of it at that point. You did it for love. It was a means of transportation.
I started off as a cross-country runner.
Right.
And I never thought I was going to go to the Olympics because I thought they didn't have cross-country in the Olympics, so there was no way I was ever going to go to the Olympics. That's as far as I thought.
Sure. But Arch Jelly saw something different in you.
He saw something raw and natural, and the thing is with Arch Jelly, he could get the best out of anyone. And I mean, he always believed, and I mean, he was a great motivator by writing letters. Lydiard was the spoken word who used to address people with spoken word. Arch Jelly was an English major, and he used to write extraordinary long letters. And every time you're in Norway or Finland or somewhere like that by yourself and you're sort of a little bit doubtful, you just bring out one of Arch's letters and read it, and it's really inspiring.
Wow. So you would carry his letters with you?
Yes, I carried them with me because they were so inspiring. And he made you believe in yourself. It comes down to it. Everybody arrives on the track equal,
Right.
especially at Olympic Games.
Right.
And it's the person who wants to believe in himself more than anything else, and the one who wants it more, and the one who takes the risk and to put himself in the race to win, that's the one who wins.
Again, we're speaking with running legend John Walker, the first athlete to break 3:50 in the mile, 1976 gold medalist at Montreal at the 1,500 meters. Did you care, John? Did you have? Do you remember reading any of Arch's letters the night before the Olympics when you won the gold?
Yes, I did. Arch was actually with me at the Olympics in '76.
Yeah.
But strangely enough, in 1974, when I sort of had my big breakthrough in the big race against Filbert Bay,
Yes.
I was a 3:38, 1,500 meter runner, and Arch came to me that night and he said, "You'll break the world record tomorrow." I said, "Arch, that's a 5-second improvement. I can't do it." He said, "You will." And I did. But I mean, that was the ability of the man. He could assess. I mean, he could have coached me as a 4-minute miler, and
Right.
that's as much as I probably would have gone.
Right. So basically, you guys were a team. Without him,
We're a team for 20 years, and
Wow.
I still respect him today.
did he change your training a lot? What I hear from when you talk about great coaches, coaches change and adapt, obviously to age, obviously to the goal at hand. When you look at this
Well-
70, when you look at 76, you were also in the 800, but it looked like that you sort of bagged the 800 to focus on the 1,500.
Well, the thing is, it was 15 days from the time I arrived in the village to the end of it.
Right.
And that was a long time without races, so we decided we'd run 2 rounds of the 800. I'd already run 1:45.6 prior to the Olympics.
Right.
And I was going to run the first 2 rounds and deliberately go out in the second round, but as it was, I went out in the first round. I sort of goofed off a little bit, and I got out sprinted and only got through, so it turned out to be a blessing. But what it did was it got me through the tunnel, got me through onto the track. It gave me a chance to compete in a big stadium of 85,000 people.
Right.
And when I was ready for the 1,500, I was ready for it.
So there was no surprises on that day.
No, I was ready to break the world record that day of the Olympics. I mean, I could have run 3:31 anything.
But the way the
But
Olympics plays out,
unfortunately,
it's a tactical race. You have to play with what the other guys do. It makes no sense for you to go off the front.
Which made it harder.
Right.
If it had been a flat-out race, I would have won by 30, 40 meters. But
Right.
the fact that the race was slow, it became more tactical and it was much harder to race.
Well, yeah, because then you've got 2 800 guys there with less than 800 to go. 2 specialists that you had.
And Eamon Coughlin, of course, he was the indoor champion as well. And
Right.
He was very good. He was pretty quick.
Well, and they started talking about Eamon going through those last few days before the 1,500. Everybody started talking about Eamon could win this. Eamon Coughlin could win this. So, you know.
Well, I got a letter from his coach.
Yeah.
Trying to psych me out.
Oh, really? What did he do?
Telling me that I couldn't win and that Coughlin was the man. I'd never run against him and watch out for him because he's going to beat my ass.
Really?
So, I mean, it didn't work, but I mean, he tried hard.
You know, when I look back at that era with you and Steve Scott and Eamon Coughlin and those great indoor track meets, and, you know, the Jack in the Box games that we had here in San Diego and Sunkist
right.
up in LA, and there was what I loved about it was the personalities and the fact that you guys went head to head and weren't asking for, well, you need to put a 2 mile in, and I don't want to race against people who might beat me. That you guys weren't afraid to go head to head night after night after night.
No, we were stupid. we didn't know when to say no. But it was great comradeship because the thing is, Eamon was the king of the boards. He was tough, and he saved San Diego so many times for the world record.
Right.
And the fastest I ever ran at San Diego was 3:52 too.
Well, indoors, that's pretty amazing.
Which wasn't bad for me. But I mean, he was just one heck of a competitor, and Steve on his day could beat anybody. I mean,
No question.
But, I mean, I enjoyed coming to the States and running indoors, even though I was probably a bit too heavy for indoors. Eamon was probably the right build.
He was perfect. He was smaller. He can fly. And Steve ran so upright. He ran so fast indoors, but you're going, God, he doesn't look like he's set up for the boards.
No, but he was strong. And the thing is, after the race, we'd all go and have a beer, and that's what it was all about. Today, the athletes go and lock themselves in a room and too frightened to eat or drink or do anything.
Now, what was the setup with when you and Dixon roomed together? Who bought the beer and who put the beer in the bathtub?
Dixon arranged that. That was my reward for breaking the world record. I came back to a full bath full of beer.
Yeah.
And the incredible thing is, my reward from Adidas, which was the shoe manufacturer.
Yes.
I just broken the world record in the Adistar 2000. It was the new prototype, wasn't even on the market.
Right.
I had no shoe contract. And Rod and I went to the Adidas and afterwards and said, well, what's the deal? And they said, well, you can come and drink the bar dry in Germany. So they flew us back to Germany, and Rod was quite happy that he didn't care about any money. And did he drink it dry?
Oh, my God. And you guys went head-to-head a lot of times, you and Rod.
We did.
And
we did.
You usually got...
I had the psychological edge over Rod a little bit.
Did you?
I used to psych him out a little bit a couple of nights before the race, and I'd try and get him out of the race, because on any given day, Rod could beat me.
Right. So what would you do to psych him out?
I would go to the track and run a 300 metres, and I'd say to him, Rod, I'll take the first little bit. You come up to my shoulder and we'll cruise the last 100 metres.
Yeah.
But psychologically, I wouldn't allow him to cruise because I'd be flat out. And he'd get up to me, and I'd try and kick again, and I'd get about a metre on him. He'd say to me, God, if you're cruising, I don't think I'm right. I better run the mile. I better run another race. little did he realise I was actually flat out trying to keep him out of the race.
And smiling like, oh, yeah, this is easy.
Exactly.
John, it's what a wonderful career. When you started out running with Arch, and would you have ever thought that you'd have such a long career and you'd accomplish what you accomplished?
No, I ran till I was 40 years of age, and that was probably the biggest disappointment. I wanted to run a sub 4 minute mile at 40.
Right. And you ran 135 sub 4 minute miles.
Yes, I did.
Wow. 135.
And that was very unfair on Steve, because I got up to the United States and he said to me, we're even. And I said, no, Steve, I've just run 6 in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Sub 4 minute miles. But the thing is, first is first, and you run to set the goal, and that's it.
That's what you try to do. When did you know that, okay, it's going to be tough for me to stay competitive at a world-class level? Was there one race where you just knew it's time to start looking for something else?
Yeah, well, I stayed around in athletics too long, but I stayed around there because I loved racing. I was a bit like Oviatt. Oviatt would have run till he's 60 if he could have.
Right, he loved it.
But I mean, the meat promoters retire you automatically anyway. But I mean, today you couldn't run for that long because the competition is so tough.
It really is.
And it's all television, it's all money. So I mean, it's totally different.
Now,
but I knew towards the end that I was getting to the end of it, because the thing is, I couldn't get nervous anymore. I was just going through the motions, and I knew it was all over.
When you didn't have the butterflies, you knew the butterflies in your stomach. Yeah, that's a
bit like getting on the stage and doing a speech. If you haven't got a little bit of tension, a bit of butterflies, you know you're not going to do a good job.
Right. If it becomes too commonplace.
Yeah, but the thing is, the reason why I hung on was because I wanted to run right up to 40 to try and break 4 minutes. I think I could have run 3:55 at 40.
Oh yeah. Because
I did a time trial about a week before on the road, and I ran 4:01.
Oh.
Just on the road, and I ran 10 quarters in 56, so I knew that I was in pretty reasonable shape.
And then what? Did you get injured?
Yeah, I pulled my Achilles.
Oh God!
Trying to outdo the young guys.
Right.
Trying to show off.
Well, I know Rod was still when he was going to turn 50, he was trying to do something. He wanted to get back on the track. But
too tough.
Yeah, it's still, and that's the hard part. He said, you know what? I can go out and have workouts like I used to, but now I got to recover for 3 days afterwards.
Yeah, the problem is you've got to do it right up to the day. You can't afford time off and come back again.
No, you're right.
But Bob, they were great years, and the thing is, athletics has changed today. Track and field's changed, and I don't think it's changed for the better.
Right.
I was in Europe last year at a reunion. The athletes are stony-faced. They don't talk. They don't have a beer. They don't eat the right food. They're so preconceived about their race. They think about everything else bar. And I mean, you've got to relax and enjoy it because it's too short. And at the moment, it's just money and just racing and pacemakers, and it's actually quite boring. I sat there in Rome watching the races, 5 pacemakers going single file, and I thought, where's the race? Where's the excitement of 5 guys coming off the bend running flat out down the straight? Of course, what happens is these guys get into championship races in the Olympics and the Commonwealth Games or Europeans, and they run 3:31 or 3:30 in the heat in their pre-races, and they get put out in 3:43 because they've never learned to race.
Right. Yeah, they don't know.
So what I'm saying is the guys today, if they'd run against me in the Olympics in '76 on a tactical race, they wouldn't know how to do it.
No, not at all.
Because they're only conditioned to running fast.
And they don't race against each other enough.
And just because you run fast, I knew many guys that could run very fast.
Right.
But never won a race.
Yeah, not a big race.
No.
Yeah, it's a different game. When you've got Rod Dixon and Eamon Coughlin and Steve Scott and Bailly and all these guys, and you're used to going head to head with them, you learn how to race, or you don't last very long.
That's right. And it was fun.
Yeah, well, that's what it sounds like from talking to Rod. It just sounds like you guys just had the best time traveling the world and going head to head with the best people and meeting people like, hanging out with Prefontaine and Steve Scott and Eamon Coughlin and all the running legends. And I think the one thing that connects all you guys is that you loved it. And it's real obvious to tell anytime I talk to any of you guys that how much you love doing what you did.
You got to love it. I mean, if you're just going in it for the money, you got the wrong way of going.
It's too hard.
You've got to love the sport. No one makes you go out and train. And the thing is, you've got to put in the graft. And it's one of the best sports in the world. It still is, because I say to any young kid, all you need is a pair of running shoes, a short, and a T-shirt, and off you go. And if you want to wish for the dreams and aim for as high as you want to go and do the work, you can be anything you want.
John, who was the toughest guy you raced against?
Well, I raced through about 4 eras.
Yeah, that's right.
I came through my own era, which Philbert Bailly was, of course.
Right.
And then I came through the Ovett Co era. And then came Steve Scott, so I ran against them all. They were all tough. Probably the classic example was Co. He was probably the most gifted athlete of the lot. Cram on his day could have beaten anybody, and so could have Ovett. Ovett wasn't a very confident athlete, even though he was quite arrogant and appeared like he was. But deep down, he was not as confident as Co.
Co was very confident.
Co was very confident, and on his day, Cram was majestic. If he'd remained injury-free, he could have been anything. And now let's not forget the late Eva Van Dam, who came in the Olympics in '76 and took 2 silver medals.
Right.
He unfortunately got killed in a car accident 30 years ago. But he could have been a great athlete too. And maybe if he'd come along, Ovett and Co wouldn't have been as powerful as they would have been.
Wow. John, thank you so much for taking some time. I really, really enjoy chatting and going down memory lane a little bit. Now, how is your health?
My health is manageable.
Okay. And
it's manageable. I take a lot of tablets these days.
Right, and this is for Parkinson's.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was diagnosed when I was 41 years of age with Parkinson's. But I manage it, and I still go to work, and I do a lot of things, and I keep very busy. I sit on the city council as well.
Right.
I get a little bit tired from time to time, but I make sure I get out of bed every day and go and do something. I'm a little bit fortunate that I haven't got Parkinson's as bad as Muhammad Ali or people like that.
Right.
And I manage it quite well, but, I mean, who knows what the future's going to be.
Good for you. Well, John, thank you so much for taking time. Wonderful to catch up with you. I've followed your career forever and ever, and obviously a big fan, and love whenever Rod Dixon comes on. He doesn't hesitate to tell John Walker stories and talk about how you owned him. No question about that. He always talked about that. John, thank you so much, sir.
Thanks, Bob.
All right.
Appreciate it.
John Walker, the first man to break 3:50 for the mile. True legend, 3:49.4 30 years ago in August of 1975. Thank you so much for listening to this edition of Babbittville Classic Rewind. And don't forget to check out our huge library of interviews with the most decorated triathletes in history on Breakfast with Bob.
Ask me what I want to be, and I will say I will be me.